Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of In a Heartbeat. I'm your host, John Clor. You know, if you've watched this show, you know it's always been about your health and well-being. And if you've seen me before, you know somehow I'm going to bring the conversation to cars. And today I think I've got a topic for you that may not just be surprising, but could actually be shocking. So hopefully we're going to be able to take away something that you will find will be very important that will relate to the health and welfare of your own family. And you know, when I talk about cars, I usually talk about driving. Here in America, driving is a real privilege. We see it as part of our own freedom. But you know, with it comes some risks. And through the years, you know, back in the day when cars were first hitting the roads of America, when people got into a bad car accident, they normally died or had serious injuries. You know, luckily through the years, our manufacturers have been great about building really safe cars. And in the last 30 years, we've come ages and ions on just moving along on the safety path. Unfortunately though, today when we do get into a car accident, when it does happen to us, not all things happen the way we want them to happen. Sometimes we have a bad accident and sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to. Unfortunately, what's going to happen to us is that we're going to find that our car manufacturers have really worked hard to make us safe, and other people are not making that easy. So today, to talk about what is the big dirty secret in the auto repair industry, I brought along a special guest, and I know you're going to love this show, Steve Lubinski. Steve, thanks for coming on, and let's talk about that dirty little secret that in the auto repair industry, and it is about accident and crash parts.
Yes, it is. You're right about, unfortunately, the part of life getting into an accident. I saw there's some stats that you could get, there are 6 million annual accidents reported to the police. And in terms of accidents unreported, it could be as high as 33 million accidents a year.
So some people have little fender benders and little bumper bangers, and other people have serious crashes, which they have to take their car into a shop to get repaired.
That's correct. And the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, they actually did some low-speed crash tests. They did a full vehicle crash test at only 6 miles per hour, and it caused $3,000 worth of damage.
You know, we're talking a lot of money, Steve. So now let's get into this little secret that's going on. We talk about getting our car repaired. We get into an accident, let's say, and we have insurance, and we don't want to drive around looking like our car went through a wash machine, so we do want to get it fixed. And we take it in and we say, repair the car, and we get 2 different estimates, and one estimate's a lot cheaper than the other, and they said that they're going to source their parts. I have a question. There's an old saying, parts is parts. Is parts parts?
John, that could not be further from the truth. Parts are not parts. When you're talking about repairing your car, we're talking about crash parts, which is exactly
what's a crash part?
I'm glad you asked. A crash part is called that because it's the part most usually to be repaired in a crash. It's your hoods, your fenders, bumpers.
Something you actually see on the outside of the
car. Correct, the outer part of the car. And they're the most parts that usually get damaged in a crash. So you have to get repaired, they're crash parts. And there are 4 different types of crash parts that you can get to repair your vehicle. You have OEM parts.
So stuff from the original equipment manufacturer.
So
they build your car, and then when they're done building your car, they build extra pieces, like extra hoods and fenders, and put them in stock.
Correct.
That's an OEM part.
They're an OEM part, or they're made by a different company that is given the dimensions, the correct dimensions and everything to make the part exactly as the factory specification.
So they're like under a contract, or they're licensed.
Exactly, they're licensed. And it's the part that has the highest part quality. It'll have the proper fit, finish, corrosion resistance, and it'll still be under warranty, and it'll work in the car with all the other systems in the car to provide the highest repair possible.
So well then Steve, why doesn't everybody just use OEM parts? Why are they, so you have OEM and then some companies that make them and then you're done, right?
No, unfortunately not. The second type of part is called an aftermarket part. It's also called an imitation part or a copy part, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's engineers taking a genuine part, reverse engineering it, and trying to get a copy as cheaply as possible. So it doesn't offer the same fit and finish. It's not going to fit right out of the box.
So their idea to enter the marketplace, they see this is a lucrative business, so they want to get into this part and have a cost advantage over the OEM.
Correct.
So they're going to try to build a part, bring it in the marketplace and make it cheaper so people buy that part.
Exactly.
Well then, we got an aftermarket part, an OEM. You say there's other kinds of parts to put on your car?
That's correct. There's also a type of part known as a salvage part. Salvage part is undamaged part taken from a damaged car.
Okay.
Which you think would make sense, but so the car's been in an accident. Let's say it was hit in the front, and you want to take parts from the rear of the car.
Sure.
So, but you don't know how long the car was sitting out there, what conditions it was sitting in,
sure.
What if it was out in the weather.
Yeah.
You don't know how the part is removed from the car. It could be damaged. It could be hidden structural damage.
Now, Steve, I have to tell you, I mean, I'm an old school car guy. Salvage parts business, when I was a kid going up to Gratiot and 26 Mile Road and getting junkyard parts for your car, that was a pretty common deal. And today, it's a multi-billion-dollar business. A lot of people, when they see the price of, say, an engine part, like an air conditioning compressor or a rear fascia, they say, well, a new one costs $300, $400, $500. I can get one out of the junkyard, or the salvage part for $100. Are you telling me that that's not always the smartest move?
No, not necessarily. In fact, you could say you get what you pay for in terms of the parts that you're getting from the junkyard.
So there can't be anything past salvage then?
Unfortunately, there is. There's one more type of part. That's called a reconditioned or remanufactured part. And that is a part from a damaged car, and the part itself is also damaged.
Oh, okay. So then they would take that off the car and they would try to make it look better? Like it look like a new part?
They would try to attempt to repair it, yes.
Okay.
That happens frequently with wheels. Wheels are frequently reconditioned, which means they were on a vehicle that was in an accident.
Okay.
The car was damaged, usually scrapped by the insurance company. The wheel was damaged, taken off the car, and either, if it was bent, it's bent back into shape, or it's sanded down back into, and then to make it look like a usable part, and then used in another repair.
Now, it seems to me that if the recondition expert knows what they're doing, that would be okay, but are there pitfalls with a reconditioned part? Oh,
there are many pitfalls. You're sanding down the part, so you may be changing its structural integrity.
Yeah.
It may not hold up well, and there's some serious safety concerns.
Well, I know as far as wheels go, if you get a real serious bend and you try to bend it back, you've weakened that metal by bending it back and forth. So maybe its integrity could be compromised at some point. So we have these four kinds of parts. Now, when you get into an accident, can you specify, as the owner of the car, what kind of parts you want?
You can certainly specify. In fact, it's your right. You have the right to demand whatever type of parts you want on your car. And you need to tell your insurance company what you expect, what type of parts you expect to be used in the repair of your car.
Well, wait a second. So you've got an insurance policy, and it says that when you get into an accident, you're going to repair your car the way it was before the accident. So you're telling me if you don't use the OEM part and you use like maybe salvage, aftermarket, reconditioned parts, you're not getting your car back the way it was before the accident.
That's exactly right. You're not getting it back exactly the way it was before the accident.
So you're really not getting your money's worth when it comes to the insurance policy. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, folks, so this is the whole issue. And I don't know if you knew this, but when you get into a car accident and you just leave it up to the insurance company and the bump shop to take care of it, and you have these three estimates, and one is really, really inexpensive, and you see how the parts are so much cheaper, and you think to yourself, oh, that's what I want. I want the cheapest possible repair. Thank you, though. I'm going to go with that estimate, or my insurance company will go with that estimate. That's not always the smartest move. Now, let's have Steve kind of walk us through why that's not the smartest move. Do you have some examples of OEM or versus aftermarket parts? Can you show us some of those?
I do indeed. I was working with Ford Motor Company, and we did some testing on structural parts.
Okay.
Structural parts would be hidden behind the crash parts. The crash parts are the outer part of the car.
Right, the structural stuff you don't see.
Exactly. Okay. They're what they sound like. They're the structure of the car.
Okay.
They make up the structural components of the car.
And I believe you brought some pictures for us to show.
I did.
Okay, now why don't you walk us through what we're seeing here?
This picture we're seeing right now is a bracket from a F-150. This is the OEM part. As you can see, it's on a scale.
Okay.
You can see it weighs just a little over 6 pounds.
Okay, that's the actual part used on the car.
That's the actual part, replacement part that is used on an F-150.
Okay.
If we go, and the second picture I have, this is the aftermarket version of that same part, and as you can see, it's on the scale, and it weighs less than 3 pounds.
Oh, wait a second, isn't it made out of steel?
It's made of different components.
Okay.
They use different material to get the cheaper cost.
Now, it looks the same.
Exactly.
It looks like it's the OEM part.
Exactly. They saw what the OEM part looks like. They made a part that looks just like it, but not out of the same material.
Okay, so you're saying that this part number one was 6 pounds. So that steel may be of a different grade or tensile strength over the aftermarket part that looks like it'll fit, but it's not actually the same strength or same kind of material inside.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Which explains the weight difference.
That is correct.
So what then, Steve, if I put that part out of my F-150 and that structural part's in there, and then all of a sudden that 6-pound part comes out and the 2.5-pound part goes in, what could happen if I run into something again?
That's something we might not even want to know what would happen.
So the likelihood is the reason why the company built that part that strong is for a reason.
Correct.
So that it meets crash standards.
That's correct.
So if you build a lighter weight part there, it may not meet the original factory factor. Well, do you have any other examples you can show us?
Yeah, I have another photo, again with an F-150. This is a radiator core support.
Okay.
So this is the very front of the vehicle, right underneath the hood, and the grill would go right in the middle there.
Okay.
This is the OEM part, and it's made out of magnesium.
Wow, why would they make, isn't that what they make airplane and fighter jets out of?
It's very, very tough stuff. It's lightweight, but it's also very strong. This is a particularly important part because it's a part related to the vehicle's airbag sensor.
Okay.
Is mounted around this part. So that's very important, especially in a front collision, where the airbag will be triggered right off the bat.
I would imagine that most of the crashes, like this is a front end part that's behind the grille, behind the headlamp. So this is the structure that we won't see, but it's also probably the one that takes the brunt of the impact, beyond all the outside crash parts. Is that right?
That's correct.
So that's why it's made out of this really strong magnesium. Okay, so now what's the issue with that?
The issue is the aftermarket version of this part.
Okay.
Which, as you can see,
doesn't look exactly the same.
Right.
Steve.
Yeah, because they don't have the exact specifications. They only can make it as best as they're measuring it themselves.
Okay.
And they're trying to make the best copy version of it. And the OEM part was made out of magnesium.
Right.
This aftermarket part was made out of plastic.
Oh, wait a second. You mean the second part? Now that one's magnesium, and this one here is plastic?
That's correct.
Now how could that be? I know there's strong plastics, but this doesn't even look like it has the same dimensions. And if it's out of plastic, is it there just to mount the pieces to? What's the function at that point?
Right, it's just to replace the damaged part.
Oh my goodness. So I can see now this plastic piece couldn't possibly perform as well as a magnesium piece.
I wouldn't see how a plastic part could perform like a magnesium
Steve,
part.
I don't see how a company could introduce this plastic part into the crash parts business and that bump shops or any insurance company would want to buy that part. Are you telling me that how often does an insurance company or a bump shop buy the cheaper part? Does it happen often?
Unfortunately, we believe it happens quite often. One thing the insurance companies don't tell you is that they can require a body shop to repair a vehicle or any vehicles, a certain number of vehicles or a vehicle itself with a certain percentage of aftermarket parts.
Oh, really?
That's correct.
Now, is that somewhere, do you have to read your insurance policy to know if that's specified in that they can do that?
That's correct. That's being cognizant of these factors before you get in an accident is important. It's not something you want to deal with when you get into the accident. Right. You want to be prepared for it. You want to read your insurance policy and make sure that the vehicle will be repaired with the parts that you want. The insurance industry isn't necessarily looking out for your benefit.
Not exactly on your side.
Not exactly all the time. Or they are, but it's cheaply for them as they can get it.
Well, I think this is a really important lesson right now at this point of the show to understand that, when you get into an accident, you just assume that your car is going to be fixed the way it was before the accident. And Steve has showed us some pretty compelling parts here that these are pretty common repair parts, things that you don't see, that it may not be readily apparent. Even after you get your car fixed, you may not even know by looking inside under the hood, and you may be walking around the vehicle saying, oh, you guys did a great job. You may not even know that they've used an aftermarket part. But I guess the real thing, Steve, is how does this part work in the real world? Do you have any photos of how a part how we can see the difference on the outside and then see it after it has actually been recrashed?
Yeah, I have some more photos.
Okay.
Of Mustang front bumper beam.
All right, let's take a look at that.
This, as you can see, we have the two side-by-side comparison. You can see the original equipment part, or OE part, is on the one side, and the aftermarket is on the other side.
Now, they don't look exactly the same, Steve.
Right.
Where is there some difference in the back of that OE side that you won't see on the aftermarket part?
The one thing you won't see is what the parts are composed of.
Okay.
The OE part is actually ultra-high-strength steel.
All right.
And the aftermarket part is made out of mild steel.
Wow.
This is a specific punch-in. You can see the sides. The OE part at the top of the screen has stiffening beads along the side, and you can see the aftermarket part does not have.
But why, if they see the original part, why wouldn't they make it to look like the OE part? As long as it fits and it works?
Yeah, exactly. Cost. And
now, why would the OE part at the top of the screen there have those little beads there? Do you know what that function is?
It adds to it helps the part be more rigid and structurally integrative to the part.
So these little parts, little additions that the OEs put on, that helps the vehicle meet its crash standard.
That's correct.
So you're saying, but this bumper at the bottom, that won't meet the crash standard.
Correct. All the OEM parts meet federal vehicle standards, and the aftermarket parts are not held to the same standard.
Now that's just not fair. All right, now tell me this. So if you took that bumper and you put it in that's a Mustang bumper, and then you put the aftermarket. Have you guys done any tests to see that exactly how well these aftermarket parts do, or how well they don't do in a crash?
How well they don't do is right. Yeah, I have one more photo.
Okay.
We did some full vehicle crash tests, and here you can see the OEM part is at the top. The aftermarket part is on the bottom.
Wait, was the OE part at the top? Was that already been crashed?
That is correct.
So they've had the same impact of. Both parts have the identical impact in the bottom part?
Correct. This was a 5-mile-per-hour full vehicle crash test. So both of these parts were put onto two different Mustangs, crashed into a flat barrier at 5 miles per hour.
Okay.
The OE part performed exactly to specification.
Well, that one on top doesn't even look like it's got a dent in it.
Correct. And the one on the bottom, you can see a huge dent right in the middle.
So you'd have to go back and completely replace that structural part all over again.
Correct.
That, to me, is a part failure.
Correct. It would the aftermarket part actually would have been denied just by structural analysis on not even how it performed in the test, based on its performance. It wouldn't have been.
It couldn't have been passed.
Exactly.
But you're telling me now, Steve, that these parts are fully legal and they're flooding the marketplace, and they're made many of them overseas. To stamp out a little part like that, and then they get to our shores, and we don't even know that they could be used underneath our car.
Correct.
Now, is there any way, after we see this kind of evidence, and I don't know about you folks, but that's pretty compelling to me. If I didn't know that they were going to use that part, I wouldn't want it in my car. And if it saved me $20, I'd rather have something that saved me physically than saved me $20. I'm not sure that anyone would argue with that. But now, are you telling me now that the whole industry that we're dealing with now, they don't have any way to stop this? I mean, how do we get the word out? What are you doing at PCG Campbell? I know that you work on some kind of industry newsletter.
Yeah, the main thing we're doing is just trying to get the word out to let people know. We know that an informed consumer is a safe consumer. If they know that these parts exist, they can know not to ask for them and to ask for the OE parts.
Okay. So now this industry newsletter, is it just Ford or General Motors, or what are all the OEMs involved in this kind of activity?
The work I've been doing is specific with Ford, but this is an issue that's across all automakers, and it's been an issue, kind of an internal industry issue that they've known about for decades. And we're trying to get it out of just the industry and let everyone know in the whole industry, or just the regular consumer know.
Right.
These types of parts exist. We did some tests. We were kind of stunned by the differences that we saw, and we just want to let people know, hey, this is what we found. You know, and
you better be aware.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say this, but it's always been the consumer be aware, and you know, and I know we're all pressed for cash and trying to save money on everything we do, including our car repairs. But in this particular instance, I think it's something we really need to pay attention to, because when we get your car repaired and you think it's just right, Steve. I mean, when I look at that, there's no law right now in Michigan or any of the states that says you can't use parts that don't meet standards. Is this across the U.S. this is happening?
There's multiple types of legislation that aim to look at what they call aftermarket parts. And with specific terminology. Using the part itself is not against the law.
Okay.
It's in terms of the terminology they use, like if the part brings the car back to pre-accident condition. Another thing term you'll see, especially in your estimate if you're in an accident, one thing to look for is the abbreviation LKQ.
What is LKQ?
And that stands for like, kind, and quality.
Oh. Okay.
It's kind of the aftermarket industry's clever way of acknowledging it's not the same part, but it'll behave the same. It'll be like, kind, and quality. But I think as the picture showed, the aftermarket parts are not like, kind, and quality at all.
That's a really good tip. If you see that, if you get an estimate done on your car and it has that little abbreviation after that, that's your chance to call out to the bump shop or the insurance company. I'm noticing here you're using a lot of aftermarket parts. I want my car repaired the way it says. Make sure your policy says that, and then go ask them. Now, don't dealerships already tell you that, when you get your car repaired, not only just to get it at a reputable shop, don't OEM dealerships use mostly their OEM parts?
When you buy a new car, they're going to tell you the difference between aftermarket parts and OEM parts. And they're not kidding around when they say there's a difference between the types of parts. But again, it depends more on your insurance rather than where you go.
Okay.
So it's important to read your policy and to let the insurance company know that, again, it's your right to demand what kind of parts you want on your car.
Oh my goodness. To me, a lot of people have no concept that this is going on, but Steve has actually brought something for us to see and get physically touch. I love a little bit of show and tell, Steve. Why don't you show us and tell us what we have here on the table and how this can really equate to what we're talking about?
I'd be happy to, John. The two parts I brought are from a Mustang, from the front bumper of a Mustang, a 2005-209 Mustang. This relates to the bumper bars that I showed in the pictures.
Okay, that goes on the front of it?
Yeah, this would fit in with the part.
Okay.
So again, with the parts, it's important that they all work together.
Right.
This is the OEM part. It's actually made out of polypropylene.
Okay.
And if you want to, you can see it's pretty dense.
Yeah, it seems real thick, and it has a real solid edge feel to it. These edges aren't crumbly and this is used to cushion the urethane bumper cover against the
That's
part
correct.
That we saw? Okay.
And
that's pretty substantial.
It may seem like a small little part, but again, it's about all the parts working together in a collision, and that's key. This part is designed to work with all the other parts.
With that OEM backing.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So with this functioning behind the bumper cover, this absorbing some of that impact, that allows that piece that's back there to also additionally take that impact.
Correct.
Okay. So now what do we have? How is this one? This one looks like the same part, only different color.
That's one of the differences. This is the aftermarket version of the exact same part.
Okay.
It's made out of polystyrene, which is essentially just styrofoam.
This is like the popcorn you get in your packages?
Right, or like with children's toys that come packaged in something.
So wait a second. They look almost identical, so they've tried to make a mold. But this polypropylene versus polystyrene, they must have different properties.
Of course, you can feel the.
Oh, this is like a feather. This is
it's chintzy.
But this is the same stuff I get when I buy a TV and I just snap it with my hands.
Right. Correct.
So they're trying to sell this part as this part.
That's correct.
And this has to be cheaper.
It's much cheaper, yes. It could be up to half the cost, but again, you can see the difference, what you're paying for when you get this part and what you're paying for when you get this part.
Well, I can tell you this just by feeling the edges of this. I could break this off with my hands. I don't want to wreck your parts here, but I could snap this off with
you don't have to. The parts were already wrecked.
What happened to this locator pin?
Exactly. When these parts were delivered to me by an aftermarket distributor, if you can see one of the pegs here, it was delivered and it was broken off. It was delivered broken.
It came in the box and snapped off because it wasn't strong enough to survive the shipping. Whereas this actually would locate it onto that bumper bar.
Correct.
If it wasn't even strong enough to survive the shipping, how would it be strong enough to survive?
Right. If a repairer got this, he would say, "Great, thanks, take it right back. I can't use it. It's broken already before I can even put it in the vehicle."
And it hasn't been installed on the vehicle yet.
Correct. In fact, when the aftermarket distributor dropped this off to me, he said, and I quote, "Be careful, the parts are kind of falling apart."
Oh my goodness!
And I'm just sitting stunned. I'm like, "Thank you."
Your eyes are certainly open. And I think, folks, this right here will show you that parts are not parts. They're not all created equal, and you can imagine they're not going to perform the same way in your car. Now, you know, Steve, we talked about this a little bit earlier. It's not just the parts you put on this piece. Maybe this fits nicely on the front of that little bumper, but also it may affect the way that the front of the bumper cover fits. You say that it's not just one piece, it's a whole system of pieces where the automaker, the engineers who design them all work in concert. This may not work in concert with the other pieces. Is this part going to be able to perform even in fit and finish? Even if you just forget the quality, forget the strength, can it still perform in fit and finish? Or is that also an issue?
Most likely, the aftermarket parts do not fit. Again, they don't fit right out of the box. The repairer has to log more hours and time just trying to get the part to fit in the first place. It may stick out at different angles. It may not fit with other parts, so they'll have to grind it down or in a way to get it to fit.
Right.
And if they can't, they have to send it back and get another one, and they could just repeat the whole process over and over again.
So what you may have saved in parts, you're going to spend a little more labor to get them to work together.
Correct.
Oh my goodness. It's mind-boggling to me. But now, is there any way that people, if they want to get more information or if they have a question, is there any way they can contact you or some place they can go with an email or something to get more information about this?
Well, the main place to go to would be, again, your dealership. They don't have a lot of information on it, and again, they're trying to get the word out.
Okay.
I also have, there's an email address called cphelp@ford.com.
All right.
Again, I work specifically with Ford, but it's for all industry-wide issues. So if you want to email the CP Help Ford to get more information on the drastic differences in the parts we found here, I'd be more than happy to get you some more information on that.
I really appreciate it. I think, folks, we really have to be real aware of the kind of stuff that's going on in our vehicles. And these two things right here, Steve, I really appreciate you bringing this stuff in and showing us this. I don't think people really know that this is an issue right now. And I don't think the awareness level is high enough on the outside of the world. And I really appreciate the fact that the OEMs are doing something about it. Now, when you say you do this industry trade letter, does it go to bump shops as well? Would my bump shop have it?
Yes, we put out a newsletter called On Target.
Okay.
We put it out 3 times a year. It deals with industry-wide issues in the automotive industry.
Right.
And we have a big push on this because we knew there'd be a difference between the different types of parts. We didn't know they'd be this drastic of a difference. Again, magnesium to plastic, that was something that we weren't even prepared for that.
Oh, it's almost unconscionable. Again, Steve, I wish we had more time to talk about this, show a little bit more. We're out of time. I really appreciate you bringing this in. I think it's a great issue. People really need to be aware of what they're putting on their car. Thanks for coming by, folks.
My pleasure.
It was really our pleasure to find out about this. And if you haven't been made aware, if you've got a car that's in the shop now, or the next time something happens and you're not aware of these things happening, you should really try to take a moment and to look very closely at your insurance policy to make sure that you're getting what you're paying for. It's not really worth your time and effort to chase down this kind of stuff. Steve, this was really some compelling information. And folks, that's the kind of information we try to have for you all the time here on In a Heartbeat. Again, I really appreciate you stopping by. I hope you've learned something. Maybe by getting the right parts on your car, you can help make your family safer and have a better experience even after something as nasty as a car crash. Again, I thank you for joining us. I'm your host, John Clor. Until next time, remember that knowledge is power.